Hello and welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Hilliard, and I'm joined once again by William Gallagher. We're recording a little earlier than usual this week for scheduling issues, so maybe something happened on Wednesday or Thursday that we don't get to. Don't worry, we'll get to it next week. But first, I'd like to talk about Apple Insider Plus. If you are a paid subscriber, you get an ad-free version and a bonus at the end of the show where we're going to discuss something different. This week, we're going to talk about travel apps, how we plan for travel, that kind of stuff. Should be interesting. William, how you doing today?
I'm all right, thank you. I mean, I'm actually in the middle of traveling, so that's what put the idea in my head. And I haven't been traveling quite so much for ages, but I'm off to Ireland in a moment, Geneva in a couple of weeks' time, and I found all these apps I haven't used in ages and how useful they are. And it's also brought back horror stories, but that's for later. Other than that, grand, and now feeling a certain bond with Tim Cook, because it turns out he and I are both obsessed with dark chocolate.
Yes, he was also traveling, but in December. He recorded a podcast, apparently, called, well, I don't have the name of it.
It was Table Manners with Jesse and Lenny Ware. Yeah. I can't say I've ever heard of before, but it's running for a long time, and it's really good.
Quite excellent. It seems the theme is they have a meal with someone through an interview and talk about food, mostly. And it's excellent. Tim Cook talks a little bit about his upbringing and his favorite foods, which, of course, include a lot of fried things because he's from Alabama. I won't give anything away, but highly recommend this. People always talk about how Tim Cook's this mysterious person, and honestly, I think it's just the man's so busy that there's really not much to say other than he works. So
That's true.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
It is interesting how revealing. The routine is food, but you understand where that takes you all over the place. We know. If you listen to the podcast, you've actually got recommendations of where to eat in Palo Alto, which, isn't a great help to me here in the UK, but one day. And all sorts of things about his personal life and preferences, which, for anybody else, maybe not quite so exciting. But like you say, Tim Cook, he's very, very good at interviews, but he always right on message. And here, he was owning up to what he liked and didn't like. Although there's a really nice moment where we're talking about chocolate, one of my favourite subjects, and he would not be drawn on whether UK or US chocolate is better.
Those kinds of opinions, they're touchy. It's funny how he won't have opinions on certain things, but he will on others. Like he loves fish. He did discuss things that I had never heard before. Obviously, I'm sure it exists somewhere, just something I hadn't encountered, like what his parents did, his professions, and the fact that he has two brothers. I did not know that. But
no, nor did I.
Yeah. And I have heard him mention his nephew before. He mentions his nephew a lot in interviews, and it's usually about when he's hiking. So apparently he spends a lot of time with his nephew, which is great. Imagine being related to Tim Cook.
Isn't it his nephew that Cook is funding through college or something, and that's about all he's spending his money on? Something like that.
Right.
That and charity.
And hiking trips, yeah.
And hiking trips, of course.
Speaking of spending money, it seems Apple spent quite a lot on a viral marketing campaign in Grand Central Station. This was pretty interesting. They love glass cubes. It's like their MO, but they put a mini Severance setup inside of a glass cube. And for several hours, random actors would be in there just pretending to be working. But later in the day, the actual cast inhabited the cube, and the director, Ben Stiller, was just hanging out outside, and that was pretty wild.
I saw footage of Adam Scott hoovering the carpet in the office. And I don't know why that was so funny. I think his total ignoring of everybody around him, just like in keeping with the show, kind of motif for it. It was,
they're
like
kind of in character.
15 seconds video, but it was in character and funny.
Yeah, really enjoyable. I love that Apple's pushing so hard. It made me wonder they have had viral marketing campaigns for Apple TV before, but is this the biggest one? I'm scratching the back of my head. I can't remember, but it feels like they've never done this kind of stunt before, where they take over a space and put up stickers and invite people to come take photos and talk to the cast members, right? Like, they had a full set, whereas other marketing campaigns have been more billboards, right?
Yeah. The closest I can think of is the Wallace and Gromit stuff in December, where they projected onto Apple Battersea. But that's not an Apple TV show. It's just the fact that it was made using an iPhone, or at least the advert was.
We might be suffering from recency bias. Apple TV Plus has been around since 2019, so 5 years is a long time. I'm sure they did something, but it's not like they set up a news desk in Central Park or anything for morning show or,
Ted Lasso. I mean, aren't there are Ted Lasso biscuits?
Like a fake soccer match. Yeah, yes. Like take over Wembley. So moving on, we have a few topics today that are not going to be super fun, but we're not going to try to be weird about it. But it was asked last week, we got into social media a little bit, and I think at the end kind of more into the loss of modern social media as it was created in the early to mid 2000s, mid 2010s anyway, and how it's changed in the last decade and where we are today. And I had a couple people asking questions about, what do you mean? Because I guess the news hadn't reached them yet, because it was fresh of what was happening with Facebook and Meta. So we wouldn't have brought it up except, well, of course, Mark Zuckerberg brought us to him talking about Apple. So you want to get into what happened here?
Well, the thing with Apple amuses me because it's an interview on, wasn't it the Joe Rogan show, where seemingly not unchallenged, Zuckerberg slammed Apple for how it doesn't do anything and it hasn't innovated in decades, and the last good thing it ever did, even tried to do, was the iPhone, whereas Facebook has, that time. Exactly.
I'm going to say some things about Joe Rogan, and I will go ahead and preamble. I don't like the guy. I don't like his show. I'm not a fan. But that said, these following statements are still true. Joe Rogan has always been kind of a weak interviewer on purpose. His whole, gimmick is, I'm just going to sit here and listen. He pitches in every now and then, but mostly his show is about having people on, usually controversial figures, and letting them air whatever they're going to say. And if there's something said that he needs to step in on, he will. They'll pull up little fact checks here and there. It's not, but he doesn't really drill in or anything. He just asks questions to guide the person and then lets them go. And that's kind of setting the stage for the Zuckerberg interview. And basically it came at a time when, earlier that week, Zuckerberg surprised the world, including his own employees, in announcing that they were getting rid of fact-checking, getting rid of most moderation. Since then, a lot of details about this have come through. They've stopped their DEI initiatives. We'll get into that later because Apple has something with that as well. They stopped their moderation practices over language that could be seen as hate speech and other things, because they want to widen their quote-unquote free speech on the platform. There's a lot going on here. And so, of course, Joe Rogan, being the person he is and the audience that he has, he wanted to have Zuckerberg on to discuss these details. And, of course, again, no secret, these moves were all made in order to better appease the incoming administration, in the hopes that the tech regulation will be directed at other companies and not ones that administration favors. And obviously Zuckerberg hopes that this will gain him favor on top of the $1 million donation to the inauguration fund and everything else that is happening. So getting into the interview, that was the preamble. The interview itself mostly centered around, that, and then they took a turn for about 15 minutes, and it was kind of funny that it took up so much of this 2.5 hour interview. But they talk about Apple for a while there. And it's, as you said, first it was basically brought about because Joe Rogan says he's switching from iPhone to Android, and they're tired of this closed ecosystem. And then it goes into what Mark Zuckerberg dislikes about Apple. And it turns out he has a lot to say about Apple. Let's see. So first off, like you said, Apple came out with the iPhone 20 years ago. Zuckerberg goes on to say, well, I was developing Facebook at the time, and I had no involvement with the creation of the iPhone, but obviously it became center to our business model. And my angle in writing about this wasn't so much to put giant block quotes in and just kind of link out. I wanted to dig into what he was saying. So first off, Facebook was immediately jealous of the iPhone and its reach. It was very clear in the fact that they tried to come out with something called the Facebook phone, which failed miserably. They've tried...
I'd forgotten that completely. Wow, yes, of course. That was rubbish.
HTC phone.
Right. Okay.
And the entire operating system was built around sharing to Facebook and viewing feeds and getting notifications from Facebook. It was a Facebook phone. Very much not too far dissimilar from a Windows phone, just worse in every way also. I enjoyed Windows Phone a little bit. It was kind of tacky, but it worked. Anyway, the whole thing from iPhone's inception to basically Steve Jobs taking a hard stance against modern social media at the time, saying it was just a waste of people's time and it was sucking people's data down and all this stuff. So Apple kind of built from the ground up this privacy stance, and it increased over time. And then we got app tracking transparency, which Facebook claims would cost them tens of millions of dollars and ruin small businesses. And then Facebook would counter with, here's this free VPN, teens, we'll give you $20 to use it. And then but then they're just sucking up all the information from people's phones as they browse the web. Like, it's on and on and on, this back and forth tit for tat with Apple and Facebook. So obviously Zuckerberg has a bone to pick, and it was especially funny in the middle when they started talking about headsets, and he says that Apple Vision Pro is somehow a response or competitor to the Ray-Bans, the Meta Ray-Bans, which is just completely separate product categories. The Meta Ray-Bans don't even have a display, by the way. I don't know if anyone knows. They're basically speakers and a camera that you wear on your face, and that's the entire interface. You can talk to it, I think, but that's about it.
And looks slightly foolish as well. So there's that.
They're pretty close to the Meta or to the Ray-Ban class. Like there's a specific style. I don't know what the name of the style is, but it implements the technology without looking too ostentatious. You might be thinking of Snap spectacles, which look insane.
Right. I'm thinking, well, I don't know if this would travel, but in the UK, Joe 90 is what I thought of when I saw this, as a particular type of oversized spectacles. Also NHS specs, as they used to be as well. But just big enough to notice, shall we say. Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry. I talked over you that. I was just so surprised that there was that comparison. I can see Apple waking up one day and thinking, we've got to beat those Ray-Ban things with this other thing. Yes. It's an odd approach, considering then I think he remembered MetaQuest very quickly and then just started saying how amazing MetaQuest was, and incorrectly said that you get a vision blur inside of Vision Pro if you turn your head too quickly. Turns out that happens in MetaQuest as well, unless Zuckerberg has a special edition. So it just has to do with combining two images together. Computationally speaking, it's very intensive if you move your head in a space. And there's something of a jelly effect in MetaQuest headsets. So I'm not sure, whereas Vision Pro does not have the jelly effect, it can actually cause you to be very nauseated. Apple seems to have nailed down not causing that kind of motion sickness. So in any case, there was a lot of weirdness like that, little pot shots. And I just wanted to point this interview out. If you really want to, you can go listen to it. It's what you would expect. But I don't know. I'm just really, as a result of this, for a long time, years, I've never used Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook proper since, I want to say, 2015. Not posting to it or anything, but I did have an active account, and then I got this job and social media was involved and I needed access to these things. And then finally, this was just the moment where I just said, I don't want my name or my face or whatever on this platform, and made sure I had permission and the ability to, and I've just deleted it all. I'm no longer using any Meta platforms, the same way I don't use any Google platforms. I just, no, thank you. I don't want to be a part of that nonsense. Funny enough, I wasn't the only one with that in mind. How to leave Facebook searches on Google went up 5,000 times since this happened. So, my goodness. Yeah. I feel like I'm still on Twitter, I'm still on Facebook, and it's kind of for work reasons more, I think. Although I was really quite into Facebook again. These things change. For a long time, I was very keen on Twitter, and Facebook was just a bit on the side, kind of speaking. then for a while, Facebook was where friends are. Now friends tend to be in Blue Sky. It's just like everywhere shutting down around me, and I haven't got out of the buildings yet. But
it's a social media apocalypse. Like the biggest, like there's so many issues now with staying there, because not only have they got rid of all these policies and things and moderation, they've also turned off features. They had an automated system that prevented the spread of misinformation by about 9x basically versus human response, and they just turned it off completely. I'm not sure why, but it's all very strange. And like I said, we don't want to dive into it too much. We're not politicizing it. Hopefully that was even enough. Obviously people know my opinion. You can read this story, you can hear my voice. My opinion of this is very poor, but that's the news as straight as it can be. I think it's a terrible decision. So it's one of those things where, how do you evenhandedly handle a discussion of something that is so awful, right? But in any case, mentioned in all of that was this DEI situation. Tim Cook has come up a couple times this week. We talked about it last time. It had happened just as we went into the episode. Tim Cook promised $1 million of his personal money to the inauguration of the president, which isn't exactly unheard of. I don't know if it's being discussed because it's this particular president, if this is donations that all these people have made before. But Cook, going out of his own wallet, was trying to avoid having Apple involved with this kind of system, which everyone seems to be doing and vocalizing more than ever before, because I think they really want him to know that they're doing it, right? Again, this is currying favor and hoping that they get special treatment as the administration takes over. But in any case, as a part of that, a lot of these companies are also taking the stance of the incoming party that the DEI, which stands for Diversity, Equality, Inclusion, this initiative that has been a thing for a very long time, it got more and more involved through the Black Lives Matter protests and through 2020, 2021, really showed a big influx, and it was useful. A lot of data shows, like the labor board data shows, that this was very good for the people that it was meant to help. And however, politically speaking, there's a group of people who believe that it is a bad thing and that it should be stopped because it is discriminatory now against white people. Whatever you believe what you want, but this is what they say. So their party wants it to go away, and a lot of these companies trying to favor that party are ditching the initiative, the DEI initiative. And Apple also was faced with its shareholder meeting where it was going to be asked to remove the DEI process, and Apple publicly stated it will not be stopping its DEI initiatives.
Well, actually, I need to correct you there. What it's done, the board has asked investors to vote against this proposal. It's really forceful with how it is very much against this. But it will come down to a vote still on January the 25th, I think it is.
Right.
When the shareholders come.
The shareholders can make a decision, right? But Apple has put in their opinion that they do not want it to go away.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, there's like 5 or 6 proposals from shareholders, and there always is every year, and Apple doesn't want most of them. And most of the stuff is very factual. We don't need this because we got that. This one, it's like, no. Right. Look at me in the eye. We're carrying on with this. Not in those words, but it was, commendably strong, I thought.
Funny enough, Apple's board is pretty good about, like, they have a couple of members that are definitely leaning in that direction, but for the most part, it seems their board has always been very progressive, and usually when Apple takes a stance this hard on something, it goes in their direction. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I don't see the board voting against Apple on this one, and even if they do, it's mostly a on-paper program that they can still enforce without the paper, right? So I don't know exactly what effect it would have to, I mean, obviously the bureaucracy of it would be gone, but I wonder if the hiring practices would change at all, if it would be more of a, what would you say, ceremonious removal of the program, because I don't see Apple going that hard into not being progressive in that way. But again, everyone listening, please, I get it. We all have different opinions. These are all very touchy subjects. I have my opinions. I make them clear, but this does not have to be a big fight. No one's being crazy here. So, anything else on that, William, before we move on?
Well, one thought is it's so depressing that for political moves, these things are going on. But also, as well, I mean, I don't want to give Facebook any credit, unless it suddenly turns around and earns them. But I'm thinking about the fact that it's switching off all these things. I know that's bad, but I also know it's really expensive. As a long time ago, I was involved in BBC online chat, quite early days online chat, and they hired me for an entire day to moderate a chat. And actually, I had a brilliant time talking with people, but I didn't write anything else that day. I was a really, really expensive person in front of the keyboard for 8 hours a day, every couple of weeks or so. But then also, you mentioned automated services, and I'm impressed with the 9 times more effective thing. But it flashes back to how, I don't know how to say this. At the time, there was a very popular, a very talented BBC personality named Terry Wogan, Wogan. And for a brief while, you could not mention him on BBC Online because his surname triggered like a censorship thing. And I don't want to explain why if you haven't worked it out, but it took us so long to get that fixed for it. So automated systems have their limits. Humans are needed. Humans are expensive. Facebook's just saved itself an awful lot of money, and maybe that's as much a reason as all the politics.
It's some people have discussed the idea that this is kind of a tangential move to layoffs, because immediately after this happened, Facebook also announced a 5% layoff and firing a large swath of employees. Now, see, Facebook didn't do the fact-checking in-house. They hired a separate company, and the company didn't actually know that they were being fired until Mark Zuckerberg made the public announcement. It's the worst way to find out that you no longer are being employed by this company. So, of course, yes, their services did cost money, and I'm sure they're saving something in doing this, but at the same time, it's kind of like canceling your car insurance because it'll save you money, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, moving on through these politically charged things, you can't escape it, right? Tech is a very much part of the world, and so is politics, and it seems that the incoming administration is also influencing how the EU might be thinking, or maybe not, because there's so much back and forth on this. Apparently, a report came out that the EU was reconsidering fines and its aggressions towards big tech and its regulations because they were worried about how the incoming administration might handle it. And then the EU basically said flat out, no, that is not being considered. So what is going on here?
They would say that, of course. No question there is an issue about how things are changing in the States, but actually things are also changing within the EU. I mean, you can't... EU's 27 member states, complex arrangements. It's an amazing body in so many ways, but it did have Margaret Vestager at its head in these fields for almost exactly 10 years, and she was really the tentpole driving force of everything against big tech and everything against Apple. I mean, European Union as a whole is there to protect its consumers, its users, against things. Big tech is unquestionably exploiting its power. So, she wasn't ever wrong to pursue these things. You could argue she was wrong on certain specific details, and I think she was. Tim Cook actually described something she'd said as being total political crap, which is, we talk about how rarely he speaks. That was very out of character for him, but you could see how it got to them. She can't get... it's a term-related thing. She ran 2 terms in her job as head of this, and she didn't get a third. Her assistant as well, or deputy, Thierry Beton, I'm maybe mangling every name here, is also moving on separately. So it's a very new field here. And as much as I am sure the new US administration is a major factor, I can well believe that there's also internal stuff, because it was actually about the middle of last year when all the reports were that the EU was about to hit Apple with a non-compliance fine over the Digital Markets Act, and it just kept not quite happening. And around that time is when Vestager herself publicly said, I'm not getting a third term, am I? And then shortly afterwards, EU saying, well, no, you're not really. So anything she was doing just seemed to have been on pause. It just seems to be continuing on pause now. I should say the fines have been paused. Final decisions on anything to do with antitrust, anything to do with big tech probes, all paused. But they're saying the technical work continues, which I take to mean gathering evidence, talking to Apple's rivals. They've said they're doing that. That kind of thing will continue. So maybe at some point, ducks in a row, it'll all come in one place, and one weekend, Tim Cook will wake up and find out he's been fined a couple of billion again.
Yeah, if there's anything we can all agree on, it's this. These next few years are probably going to be incredibly heavy regulation-wise. There's been a lot of talk around big tech and how it handles information and data. Now, as we talk today, it's kind of a whole deal. We're in the middle of it. It could change dramatically by the time you're listening to this on Friday or Saturday. Wednesday, the Supreme Court met and said, we're not talking about this today, so we have no idea what's going to happen. They could make a decision on Thursday to reverse everything. We don't know. But TikTok is on the chopping block. They're about to get banned from the United States on Sunday. TikTok has already made it clear what the plan is going to be. They are going to completely remove the ability to use the service in the United States, even if you have the app installed. And I don't know what that means for VPNs. I'm assuming that, so for those of you who don't know, TikTok has a Chinese branch and a global branch. And the branch that's operating in the United States is, I believe, even more specifically, a U.S. branch, maybe the global branch, but it's not the Chinese one. So they have a couple of different toggles they can do. And I believe what's happening is the TikTok app distributed in the United States will just not work. I think this also means that a VPN through the TikTok app will not work, but the service will still be live for the rest of the world. Yeah. So you should be able to go through a browser through a VPN. You didn't hear it from me, but that being said, removing the app, removing the ability to manage this content, all of your favorite creators that are in the United States will no longer be able to post or have accounts. And I don't know what's going to happen to those accounts, if they're all going to be just unreachable. This is all a lot of questions for something that still hasn't happened yet that could still be reversed. And there's so much that could happen. Do you know a few of the options that they have at this point?
Well, one thing I do know is Oracle, which hosts the service in the US, will be required to stop hosting it. So I had assumed that meant nobody could get it, but I take your point about VPNs overseas. I don't quite know how this is going to work, but apparently TikTok is trying to arrange it so that existing users can download all of their existing materials and things, so at least have it. But you're right, from when the ban starts, if it starts, all US users will see when they launch the app is a page saying you can't use this. So I don't know how that's going to ram out in the end. Yeah.
We've seen a few options. The United States gave them the opportunity to sell off, which there's this group of billionaires led by the Shark Tank guy. Anyway, the Shark Tank guy.
Actually, we're now at the stage, we're 9 months on from when President Biden signed the ban, and that was the deal. You've got 9 months to divest, unless you're in negotiations at the end, in which case there was an optional 3-month extension, and I assumed that wasn't happening. But if there is a company involved, even maybe there's still time for that.
There's a few problems here. TikTok will not sell. They've made it clear. And the United States, the people in these discussions believe that maybe they won't sell with the algorithm, but they will sell without the algorithm because they just want to buy the server, basically, of information and then open a US-based TikTok app without an algorithm with access to all of the data, and then they would have to build their own algorithm, basically, but all of the accounts and all of the data would remain. So that is apparently on the table, and there's this group of billionaires. Someone was floating around Elon Musk, but apparently TikTok just very quickly, like minutes later, vehemently said no, just no, to an Elon Musk acquisition. And then there's also, beyond acquisition, there are a few other places. I think a senator from Tennessee has actually put a letter in to extend the period in which this is all happening, because they're arguing on behalf of the creators that are going to lose audiences and incomes. And there's so much happening that could delay or stall this. But as of right now, and based on the Supreme Court hearing the other day, it is going to get banned. And for everyone saying, oh, the incoming administration said that they don't want it to go away because it was great for the election, it seems, now I'm not 100% on this, but it seems that maybe that is not still the case. They seem to support it becoming an American app and an American business and it remaining that way, but they don't seem to support it actually staying a Chinese company and remaining in the United States. And they seem to have said as much during the Supreme Court hearing the other day. So I don't know what to say, except if you like TikTok, I'm sorry. It's probably just going to go away, but I have a feeling someone soon will find a replacement. And there are replacements.
There are replacements, but one of them that amused me is this one. It's not the proper name. It's known for short as Red Note. I can't remember the full name of it, but it's another Chinese service, very similar apparently to TikTok, and its popularity has just boomed in the last few weeks as people assume TikTok is going away.
Something like 500,000 users have moved to Red Note in the last few days,
Wow.
and it was very surprising for the company. But that's very small. In the grand scheme of things. If I remember correctly, I think Blue Sky saw something in the millions after
True. Yes.
And that was in a couple of days. This is more of a protest. Red Note has a lot of problems. It cannot become TikTok, and it won't. It is a Chinese-based app that does not have an American-based ecosystem. It is purely a Chinese app. It is in Chinese. The settings are in Chinese, and they weren't prepared for this whatsoever, but they also have rules that Americans aren't going to agree with, like you can't mention that Taiwan is a country, and you can't talk about Tiananmen Square or Xi Jinping or anything like that. So
but apart from that, it's right. Well, actually, I thought that was great news, and I was highly entertained by it. And now, okay, it's not like I was going to join it, but
the memes are fun, and there's this whole meme about all the TikTokers saying goodbye to their personal Chinese spy, which I find amusing. But it's definitely a protest of saying, oh, well, you're taking away TikTok, you think it's bad. Well, we'll find something worse and find the most extreme version of TikTok they can and join it instead. So I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. I wanted to discuss it here because it is an app. It's the most popular app, one of the most popular apps on an Apple platform. Apple will have to remove it from the App Store. And I don't know. I do know that there is a lot happening in this space. There's a person who made an alternative to Instagram called PixelFed that went live this week on the App Store, finally, after a very long test flight. And it is cool. It is a federated Instagram, basically. You can use alternative apps. There's an app out there that allows you to view your feed like Glass, the app Glass that costs $40 a year, except this is just pixel-fed, and it is beautiful. So like there's a lot of good stuff going on here in this space. So if you're itching to get away from Meta as well, check out PixelFed. I know it's federated, and maybe people don't like that. They avoided Mastodon for that reason. It's a little confusing. It's not as mainstream, I would say. But I'm expecting we'll see a Blue Sky-esque Instagram here soon, and a Blue Sky-esque TikTok. Now, the person who made PixelFed is also working on an app called Loops, which is a TikTok replacement, but also federated and also a single person working on this. So I'm glad that there's interest out there, that there's developers working on it, but I feel like especially something as big as TikTok or Instagram, we're very quickly going to get into the territory of needing a large company or a large investment into these things in order for it to happen.
It seems like social media was this tiny little thing that grew and then everybody used it. And now it's coming back into kind of territory of like fanzines and independent, smaller things that some of us are glomming onto different bits, others aren't. It's never going to have, passively, never going to have the kind of reach and importance that it used to have. Again, I'm wondering, is it all over? Ultimately?
Maybe. But there is news in this front. There's basically this, I'm not entirely sure what you call it, maybe a nonprofit. It's called Free Our Feeds, and it's basically taking control of Blue Sky, which is interesting, and basically saying their whole idea is save social media from billionaire capture. They're going to make it so Blue Sky, Federations, Mastodon, all these things not only work together over these protocols, but also that they will be untouchable, so that even if someone tries to buy out a specific app, website, or algorithm, all of your information will be portable and you can just go to a different service. And so this is the most significant thing happening in this space right now that could show some change. And if they could just uncomplicate sign up and account generation, it would be where everyone went. I could see this honestly being devastating to things like Meta and X, but it's just going to take time to see if it grows. I don't think social media is going to die, but I have talked about this theory before of I think social media needs to get smaller. I think that there is space for a global social media where everyone can post and discuss things. Microblogging, I think, is always going to be a thing in some form or fashion, where I can reach you in the UK or I can reach someone in Japan just by posting something and they see it in their timeline because they follow me. That I don't think will ever go anywhere, but it might always have this stigma of it's not personal, it's more of a bulletin board. I think personalized private social media is the next best thing, and that would be local groups, group chats, shared photo albums, these kinds of things that we have access to now. They're not really viewed as social media, but I think they will going forward as more of these integrations get tied to each other.
There was a time when I wouldn't have cared, really. I mean, social media, take it or leave it, but it's become part of things. It's become part of work, so obviously paying attention, but I've also just enjoyed it. And I think I mentioned this before, but on this coming Saturday, I'm going to meet a friend that I have never met before. Somebody I start to know very well over Twitter and now over Facebook. Another writer. I really like the guy. I'm quite nervous, actually, about meeting this stranger who's a really close friend. But it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for social media. So, yay, social media.
Yeah, I can see the why it exists and the usefulness of it, and I don't want social media to go away. But at the same time, I've been having difficult discussions with people about who are mourning the loss of TikTok, and I was never on the platform. I didn't care for it for various reasons. Their algorithms were a bit rude. They had a lot of like grimy practices. Like I remember they would favor better looking people in the algorithm. That kind of stuff.
Oh, well, that's why I use it more than you, obviously.
Right.
No, I joined it twice because I had to write about it, and I fully intended to stay both times. But the moment I went on, the first video it showed me was, in both cases, was really uncomfortable, and it put me off the whole thing, so I came off again. But
I've seen good content like anywhere on TikTok. I've seen funny things posted to me or shared with me, and it's fine. I have to watch it over the web because I don't have the app, but the premise is fine. It's the execution. They basically turned it into a casino. They drive at people's most addictive parts of their brains and forces them to seek a hit, more addictive than cigarettes. Right? I will see people unable to hold their attention for more than a few seconds because they have to pick up their phone, tap TikTok, swipe up to the top to refresh, and then start scrolling down one by one, swipe. And it's just like you lose them mid-sentence sometimes. Or a TV show ends and you're on the page to select the next episode or to select a different thing that you're going to watch, and they have to pick up their phone and check TikTok. It's an incredible addiction. They can't make it moments between using this service, and it not only frightens me, but I find it disgusting, honestly. And
I can't fully complain about that because I think I'm prone to at least similar things. But that example of television, the number of times I see comments on any social media saying, I'm really enjoying episode 2 of, I don't know, Doctor Who or something. Well, apparently, no, you're not. Not if you're stopping it to write this. And there's some celebrity in the UK, I blanked on a name, who really complained about Battlestar Galactica. How dare they not explain something? They did explain it.
Right.
I saw you tweet. Well, in that case, I was watching Twitter because I preview copies of it, so I wasn't, also on Twitter for it and ignoring the show. But bugbear there / rant over.
It's not necessarily TikTok's fault. Like our attention spans have been an issue for a while. It's just it's so much more aggressive, right? Like anyone in the modern age, I won't blame you for picking up your phone in an idle moment to check something or maybe turn on a game while you're waiting in line at the grocery store. But it's not those things that I'm seeing that I'm worried about. It's the aggressiveness of it, like they need it. And this loss is basically people proclaiming like, I will have nothing left in my life if I don't have TikTok kind of mourning. And it just worries me that something can be that powerful and that involved. And when it's just 2-second videos, 2-minute videos, absorbing all of your time and giving you nothing in return. And I don't know. Like, I get it, but I just wish people would self-moderate better is all. I know someone who was watching a television show, but they were playing, I guess, some sort of Clash of Clans on their phone the whole time. Their face was towards the phone in their lap, and the television show would play episode after episode, and they would look up occasionally. I don't think they could describe the main character or even tell you what name they were. They could vaguely tell you what was happening in the show, but they would swear they were watching it. And I'm just like, intentionality is so important. I mentioned it before, but go ahead.
No, I was just, I mind when people don't watch things, but it's up to them, of course. It's when they criticize something or even, in fact, actually praise something that they haven't watched. That really bothers me. Like, I do have a relative who will just walk into the room and switch off the television because she's not the one watching it. So, you see her do this and think, okay, I'll catch it later, kind of thing. People are very dismissive of television and films and work that we know takes an amazing amount of effort, and that I find dispiriting. But if one chooses to prefer a game, then prefer the game.
No, I'll clarify. I don't care what people do with their time. It's just be aware of what you do with your time. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you're this superhuman character that can actually multitask. Pick one over the other. If the TV show isn't interesting enough that you can't just sit there and watch it, don't bother watching it, right? Yeah. If you want background noise is fine. Just, don't claim that you're actually keeping up with it or whatever. It's just, I don't know. It's just an odd little pet peeve of mine, I guess, that if I'm showing you something, I will take your phone and throw it out the window if you're on your phone. So, yes. But that's a different conversation.
Well, is this related or actually just a cry for help? I've realized in the last week, I am somewhat dependent on my iPad. It's practically a security blanket for me because I've had to do something when I couldn't have the iPad with me, and I practically twitched without it. So maybe it's a good thing that I can't have it with me for a while. Step away, William. But yeah,
as the kids say, go touch grass.
Right. Hand on heart, I have never heard that phrase before, and I'm wondering which type of grass we're talking about. But I'll Google it later.
Grass in the yard. And it's an old one, so I'm an old man. But old meaning it was probably last year's phrase, and no one said it in a long time, and now I will be aged 20 years because I said it. No, so in any case, speaking of losing time, the HomeHub might be delayed.
Yes, I was disappointed with this, but I suppose it makes sense. It's this is going to circle back to a question that I have asked you before and you've explained before, so I'm sorry that I can't seem to hold this in my head. But the story, as I understand it, Bloomberg claims that this HomeHub that we've talked about often was probably going to come out around March time, but now maybe quite a bit later because it was going to rely on iOS 18.4 and then things in iOS 19. So iOS 19, I mean, WWDC will have it mention of it, and there'll be beta releases in June, but it won't be out until September time. And the thing that it's going to use in these things is app intents. Now, let me try saying this because I hear an awful lot about app intents, and I do get it wrong. I believe what that means is my app as a developer can give some of its features to iOS to be used in any other app. And that's how functions are swapped around instead of just apps. Does that make sense, or am I just totally wrong again?
No, I mean, app intents are just basically ways for the app to tell the device what's happening, either by saying what's on the screen or what's running in the background.
Oh, okay. That's less than I thought. I don't really follow why the HomeHub would need it so then.
So if I had to guess why it would be so reliant is because you probably don't actually sign into anything on the HomeHub. It's probably just attached to your account, and like the widgets on Mac updating because your iPhone's nearby, the HomeHub will update information from various widgets based on you being on the same network as your iPhone, more or less. And these app intents would but even that though doesn't need app intents because widgets already exist. So I'm not sure if I buy this story, and I don't know why iOS 19 would be required because app intents are an iOS 18 feature. This one just is weird. This hardware I don't think is dependent on software releasing. I think Apple could release it today and it will work fine. So I don't know if I believe any of this at this point. It's still in my head it could be released as early as before WWDC. I'm hopeful, but it could come at least by the fall. But if it's pushed all the way back to next year, it can't be a software issue. It has to be some sort of hardware thing they've run into. I think Bloomberg might be leaning into the narrative that Apple's behind in software, which I don't believe.
Is it not possible that actually it's a scheduling thing and that there's something else that's taking precedence there? The next iPad release, the next MacBook release or something, and it's just got to find a slot when they can get it out into the world.
I'm not sure. I mean, Apple it can work on more than one thing at a time. I don't know. This is obviously coming from some sort of inside information, but it's just, I don't quite understand the thinking here, right? Why would it be reliant on app intents? Why is this display relying on Apple Intelligence in the first place? Just like with HomePods, if it doesn't have access to all of your data, Apple Intelligence is basically useless. And unless app intents allow the iPhone to give this data to the hub in a private way, I don't really understand what the issue is.
I should say, I mean, obviously I get that Apple works on multiple products. It's also really, really sharp on when to release and when to promote things so that it gets maximum attention on that and doesn't take attention away from anything else. Like, it would never release the Apple Car, say, at the same time as the iPhone. It knows how to play the market and get eyeballs going where it wants, I think. But
well, so app intents, just to clarify, basically it's the system in which right now apps can donate information to Siri and Spotlight and it's basic information that can be searched, so basically files, images, text, these kinds of things. App intents take it a step further by basically donating portions of the app to the service so that the app can recall a plane ticket and show it to Apple Intelligence, right? There's a lot going on there, and it's going to be a very deep system. It's what allows a lot of the magic that Apple promised at last WWDC to actually go into place, and developers are already building for it. And I think it'll be interesting once it's all in line. I don't think 18.4 will see the maturity of that feature. I think iOS 19 will have a better handle on it anyway, but I don't think that necessarily means that this hardware would be delayed because of it. I'm just the stories just don't seem to match is all.
but beyond when it comes out, we're still at the stage where you definitely want one, and I do, unless it's got a robot arm and follows me around the house.
I do want to mention briefly, I keep seeing on social media people posting, go to settings and turn off learn from this app, and go through and toggle each one off one at a time, because Apple is spying on what you do and absorbing all of your data and using it to train their AI or whatever. And it's really dumb. Don't do this. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Apple's learning is all on device. You're training your on-device algorithm, but it has nothing to do with Apple's main system. In fact, you don't train Apple's algorithm ever. Apple trains it on its own in a separate warehouse somewhere, not using your data. That's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. So turning all those things off is basically turning your smartphone into a dumb phone. And you're also basically turning off Spotlight results as well, which is also dumb. Don't do that.
But it does benefit all the YouTube. I am a YouTuber. So all the people who make YouTube videos that decry the incessant spying that Apple does. They got a few more clicks out of it. So what does it matter that we've ruined our own phones? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of viral posts of people saying turn off all these settings of just different, not even related to Apple Intelligence. Just go turn this off. Like, I remember having to teach my family, you can leave location data on. They're not following you, whoever they are. Just leave your location data on. It's so important. Why don't my weather widget work? Well, your location is turned off, so the weather doesn't know where you are. But if you turn it on, they'll find you. I don't know.
That reminds me, I had this relative once who begged me to come over and fix their, oh God, this is so long ago, it was a video recorder. Why is the clock on the video recorder? Why do I have to keep resetting it every day? And it's because you were unplugging it every night.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, there was this idea previously that you'd have to unplug your electronics to save electricity. It's the case in some instances, but not all. Anymore, most things are very intelligent about not using much electricity when they're plugged in unless they are in use. So you no longer have to do that. But that is very funny. One last little touch. I want to touch on a couple of quick stories. Illinois is the next one that are working on. Illinois is the next one that is working on implementing digital ID that will be in Apple Wallet. So cool, another state. Tennessee, still out there somewhere. They promised it. There was a law put in place several years ago. Last spring, they mentioned that they're still working on it. In the summer, again, still working on it. So anytime I could maybe get a very useless ID in my Apple Wallet.
Right.
It doesn't do anything.
In the UK? Okay.
Yeah, in the UK. Do you even have IDs over there? I don't know.
Ooh, that's harsh. I actually spent, nobody needs to know this, but I seem to have started. I spent an hour this morning trying to prove to iTunes and iBooks that I exist, that I trade, that I am within the EU, and it was trying to provide information for it because of new EU changes about address details and then tax forms. And actually, the last thing this morning, I'd done everything, and it popped up with, you also need to fill out tax forms for Brazil and, was it Madagascar? Somebody beginning. Why? And it even said, actually, you don't have to, but until I went through and said, it's fine, don't worry about it, it kept prodding me. You must provide tax details. So, yes, I'm a bit up. Ask me any question about tax today, I can tell you. Not tomorrow.
Do you have a vehicle with CarPlay? I forget.
Yes, I do. And I love CarPlay, and I know exactly where you're going with this, because the moment I heard about this, I thought, I don't understand it, and where's Will? CarPlay, you're going to talk about widgets, aren't you?
Yes, so basically the standby widgets that we've come to know and love on iPhone will probably be available on your CarPlay display. I don't know how useful this is, but quickly readable little widgets, sure, but I hope that I don't know, it feels like there's some danger here because you're getting more information and possibly moving elements. There's one widget that I have installed, Pixel Pals, that lets you have a like an animal that just lives in a widget, basically. It's like a chia, like a what are those things? A Neopet or whatever.
Oh, I'm thinking Tamagotchi or something. Do you have to feed it in some way?
Yes, you can feed it. You can make them fight each other. You can have friends, and Pixel Pals is a cute little app. It functions as a widget, and it can be a standby widget. Can I have that character on my car dash now? I don't think that would be very good, but I don't know, a clock, a weather widget. I'm not sure what you would do with this that isn't already happening in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I do know at one point, for some reason, I needed to read the developer details for CarPlay, and it is astoundingly stringent what it will and will not allow for safety reasons. Anytime somebody announces a new CarPlay, like Apple Music Classical suddenly appeared on CarPlay a few months ago, I give a little cheer because I know they've worked through so many hoops to get on there. But then on the other hand, I'm embarrassed to say how many years was using CarPlay before I know you could swipe to the side and get a whole new page full of apps. So presumably you could swipe the other way and get some widgets, and there are things I'd like to change. I really like the view on CarPlay where it's in 3 panes. Your next appointment, the map, and the music you're playing. But the music you're playing always shows the album art, not the track name, and it's usually the track name I want to know. So if I could just decide to make that bit bigger and get rid of the calendar stuff for it, I mean, obviously not while I'm driving, but fiddle about with it and then have it set with widgets or anything else. That could be good, I think.
Yes. So one last little story. M. Night Shyamalan. Have you heard of this lawsuit? It's been going since 2020.
I only heard of it recently because suddenly there's an amazing amount of, I can't remember the sum, but millions of dollars somehow involved.
Yeah, $81 million.
Okay. And it's a copyright thing, is it?
So this director, Gregorini, she claims that a movie she made that amassed maybe $300 on its debut in theaters total. The Truth About Emmanuel is somehow the entire inspiration, and basically M. Night Shyamalan plagiarized this movie that came out in 2013 to make Servant. And yeah, it got thrown out at first, and of course appeals courts brought it back. I went through and looked at this. I read the plot. I've of course watched Servant, and it doesn't appear to have any real ground. I hope that, so the jury's, funny enough, going to watch the entirety of the movie and the first 3 episodes of Servant to help with the case. And of course, M. Night Shyamalan and people from Apple will be defendants in the case. So it's still going. She's seeking $81 million for plagiarism on a movie that made 300. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but hang on. The question is, how much money did Servant make? Isn't it? So if it is plagiarism, then surely she deserves a cut. But
I don't think it is. I don't know on what grounds you can declare plagiarism, but basically the movie involves a woman living next door to a neighbor. The woman, she's, or a girl, I guess, woman, she's 17, had lost her mother, and the neighbor that moves in looks very strikingly like her mother, gets offered a babysitting job. Turns out it's a real reborn doll. She decides to keep the reborn doll secret and pretends it's a baby and tells everyone she's babysitting. And the woman she's babysitting for starts seeing someone, and she has to try and keep the doll a secret. And in the end, the man discovers it, and they think she's kidnapped the real baby and replaced it with a reborn doll, until ultimately the woman realizes that there's this whole thing, and a dream sequence is involved, of course, and the end of the movie, the woman is institutionalized, and it's a movie mostly about this kind of coming of age, kind of this girl dealing with the grief of the loss of her mother, and this strange story involving a reborn doll. It's not necessarily a thriller; it's more of a just drama involving this. I don't think it's meant to be as supernatural, whereas Servant is about this woman who loses her child, gets a reborn doll, and hires a nanny thinking it's real. And the nanny shows up and treats it like a real baby, even when the woman's out of the room and the husband's confused by this. Literally the second episode, spoilers, it's a real baby suddenly. There's no more reborn doll. Huh. And now the mystery is, where'd the baby come from? Is she a witch? Did she turn it into a baby? Or is this her baby she smuggled in a suitcase? And the whole movie is this supernatural, cultish thriller around this mystery.
Right.
And so the reborn doll is the only thing that really ties these things together. And the rest of it is it's a completely separate story. And to claim that they got inspiration from each other is madness, I think. Looking at the plot of both, it just does not connect in any real way.
You're not really sold me on either of them. I think I might be using social media instead of watching those. But, now I know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy Servant. I love M. Night Shyamalan's work, but and he has been accused of plagiarism before, so maybe this person thought that it could swing the case because apparently, what was it? The Village and Sixth Sense have both claimed to have been taken from other stories or whatever, but unimportant. It's just, in this particular case, it is an incredible stretch to suggest that they are the same plot, basically. Because that's what you have to prove. In order for this to be plagiarism, it's not, it's similar. It has to be, you stole this. And yes. There is not enough overlap here. It's like saying Pokemon and Digimon are plagiarism. It's just, it doesn't work. On the surface, it's like, oh yeah, cute cartoon monsters. Yeah, maybe they did steal from each other, and then you look into it and it's like, oh no, these are completely different things. So, inspired by, maybe, but inspiration isn't illegal. So I don't know.
You can't copyright an idea, so it's the execution of it that's a question here. But sorry, I'm asking you too much about this, I realise, for something I'm never going to get around to watching.
Right. I'm interested in the trial. Yeah, I'm interested in the trial and how it goes, and we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to bring that up because I just found it to be an interesting little tidbit in the Apple TV Plus sphere. All right, so ending here. Also, I watched a trailer for a movie, a new series that involves math coming to Apple TV Plus, and I'm very interested. I believe it's called Prime Target.
Oh, a conspiracy thriller about it. Yes, I've seen that trailer. Yes, I'm looking forward to that too.
That's about him basically cracking a code that will allow him to hack any encryption on the Earth. It's
the Riemann hypothesis, I presume, proving that it's wrong, and all of our security is based on the assumption that it's correct. So,
right.
Yes. So actually plausible, but yeah, that could be good. Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap up here. I'm pulling up the podcast app. Let's look for reviews. December 3rd, November 24th. All right, here we go. We have a new review as of the previous Friday in January. Super cool for the geeks. Really rad Ryan is the reviewer. I am someone who likes to know all the changes when a new iOS update drops, and these guys have it all for me. Well, I'm glad that we can provide that information for you. As always, if you guys want to leave a review, we'll check them out here, good or bad. Just leave them in the Apple Podcast app. We'll check them every week and let you guys know what we think. Obviously, we're happy to hear from you guys, and I hope that the audio stuff has been going well. I personally need to do a couple of things to my setup to tweak it, but overall, I think we've hit a pretty good spot. Anyway, so you guys can find me on Blue Sky as usual. I'm pretty active there. You can still tag me on Mastodon. I check those notifications, and you can email me, wes@appleinsider.com. William, where can people find you?
Well, these days, social media, what can you say? I think I'm still very active on YouTube. That's the last one I'm very, very active on. But also, forget all social media. Email me directly, william@appleinsider.com. Good old email. Love it. Yes.
Yeah, and again, I hope that these more sensitive topics, especially involving politics, didn't rub anyone the wrong way. Obviously, we all have our opinions, and I definitely make mine very known, especially outside of the podcast and more outside of the articles that I write, but that doesn't mean we can't have a conversation here. And of course, if you want to make any reasonable comments, you can always reach out and let us know. But in any case, we will talk soon. And if you are an Apple Insider Plus member, you will hear us continue talking very soon. Much sooner, anyway. Talk to you guys next week.